Hi everybody, it's Franny from Heidi and Franny's Garage, and today is the oil change for the 3.2 Carrera. So it's going to be great fun. It's a pretty straightforward process, although I have a couple of tips and tricks for you I want to show you. I think you're really going to enjoy. So that's up next on Heidi and Franny's Garage.
You want to get your tools and your supplies set up ahead of time. You'll need an oil filter, crush washer, 15mm socket, and some rubber gloves. Also, you're going to need oil containers that can handle as much as 4 gallons. I like to use 2. You'll need a torque wrench and up to 12 quarts or liters of oil.
So the first thing I want to show you today is the oil cap, which is right here. It's big and yellow. You want to make sure that you have a good seal on this oil cap. It's very important. There's a rubber seal right around the inside of this thing, and if that seal gets a little old and doesn't seal very well, then you'll get a vacuum leak and you'll get all sorts of problems with the idle on your engine. So make sure that that's a good gasket. They're very easy to replace. You can get them at Pelican Parts or whatever. And another thing you might want to do is just use a little bit of silicone grease around that, and it'll make it much easier to get it on and off. One of the ways you can tell is when you take the cap off, your RPMs will drop a little bit. Not much, just a little bit, but you'll feel it kind of settle in just a little bit lower because you're allowing air in and breaking the vacuum seal on the engine. So, great way to test if your cap is working well. So our first step in this is going to be to remove this yellow cap and leave it off. It's going to make draining the engine a lot easier. So we'll go ahead and pull that off and leave it off. And now that the engine's good and warm, the next step's going to be to raise the car, and we'll go ahead and drain the oil. Since this engine is a dry sup engine, it keeps most of its oil in this external oil tank here, right behind the right rear wheel. This is the oil return line. It goes back to the engine. So in order to make your life a little bit easier, add one of these. I bought it off of Pelican Parts, and it's just a quick drain. So there's a little lever back here that you can push forward, rotate it down, and all the oil will drain right out.
This is my oil drain pan, and it has a little screen inside it here. So we're going to take the screen out, actually, because I have this super nifty rubber tube. So I'm going to put this under here, and I'm going to put my rubber tube on the end of this. Okay, and so all we have to do is just pull this lever forward and turn this down, and we'll go ahead and drain all the oil out. We'll let that drain, and I'm now going to loosen up the bolt on the engine and drain the engine as well.
This is a 3.2 Carrera, so they've moved the drain out to the side here. So this is a 15mm bolt, easy enough to get off, and there's an aluminum crush washer underneath it to keep it from leaking.
There we go. The majority of oil is going to come out of the big tank. There is, however, about maybe 1/3 to 1/4 of the oil in the actual sump. With the oil dripping out and into the drip pans, I'm going to go ahead and lower the car, and we're going to swap out the oil filter next. On the 3.2 Carrera, the oil filter is up on the right haunch here at the top of the oil tank. It's mounted horizontally there, so we're going to put a bunch of rags underneath there before we take it out, or we're going to make a big old mess. And I've also got a tray here to put the oil filter in when I take it out. It should come out fairly easily. It should be hand tight. All right, got it loosened. Turn tilt it back. And there we go. There's always a little bit of oil in here. Get that with our rag. So we have our new filter here. It's a MAHLE OC54 filter. This is silicone grease that I got from the hardware store. You can find it in the plumbing section. I'm just going to put a teeny bit of that on the seal here. There we go. And in theory, that's going to make it easier to get the filter off next time. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and prep the drain plug as well. So it has a aluminum washer on it. So take the old one off, it's just a crush washer. You don't really want to use these twice. My brand new crush washer here. I'm going to go ahead and clean this real quick. These plugs, if you can see the center section in that, that's a big old magnet. So if you've got any issues in your engine, you'll see a bunch of filings around this. Of course, it won't pick up any aluminum, but it will pick up any steel that's floating around inside the engine. So always inspect that really carefully. This one's really clean, which that's a good thing. Okay, so our drain plug's all nice and clean. We're just gonna put our new washer on and go ahead and install the filter. Okay, well, we're just going to spin our filter back on and put it on hand tight. Okay, that's all we needed there. With our oil filter back on, we're going to raise the engine back up and reinstall the drain plug and turn off the little valve that I have for the drain on the big oil tank. If you have the standard drain plug here, the torque value on that I believe is 30 foot-pounds because it's going into a steel tank. So I'm just going to pull my tube off here. All right. And want to remember to close our valve. So with it, this is with it open and draining. And then when it comes back, it should snap. There we go. See it snapping shut. And that's it. That's all we have to do with that. That really makes life a lot easier. All right, our next step is to replace our drain plug with our new crush washer. This bolt on the engine is to be torqued at about 51 foot-pounds, so I have my torque wrench all set to that. Well, I don't have a socket short enough to get up there, but I do have a universal joint, so I'll just use that. Sure, it'll be fine. There we go. I'll torque down. With everything tidied up under here, and we set this to 51 foot-pounds, and we've got our valve closed on the back here. And now it's time to lower the car once again and put some oil in it. You want to make sure you remove the dipstick that's in here first, or it's just going to be really hard to get the oil in without it going everywhere. So this dipstick has a min mark here and a max mark here. We're shooting for somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to start adding oil. I'm going to put in 8 or 9 quarts, and then we're going to check our level. Now you can use a large funnel if you want, but you can kind of see this is almost horizontal here, and as you pour the oil in, it's probably going to want to drip back a bit. So instead, I'll just put a rag there. With the single quarts of oil, it's actually pretty easy to get them in. Okay, quart number 1.
A few moments later.
Okay, well that's 8 quarts. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and start the car, get the oil flowing through it a little bit, and we'll be adding probably another 1.5 quarts would be my guess, but we'll see. Check with a dipstick real quick like a bunny first. Hard to read, but it's somewhere between min and max, so that's not a bad place to start. Okay, I watched our oil pressure come right up, so I'm feeling good about that. We'll go ahead and check our level here in a minute. The car has to warm up a bit to get the oil out of the tank and back into the engine a bit. So we'll warm it up a little bit and let it idle for a little bit as well. dipstick is pretty low, so go ahead and add another quart of oil. Okay, so I want to show you the oil level gauge in the car, which is this gauge right here. This one is the fuel, and then over here is our temperature. This is the curious thing about these 911s. Watch as I sort of spin up the RPMs a little bit. You'll see that oil level drop. There it goes. Now the reason it's dropping is because it's pumping the oil out of the tank and into the engine. The oil level sender is actually in the tank, not in the engine. So as I let go of the throttle and let it go back down to idle, you'll see that needle will climb back up as it pumps the oil back out of the engine and back into the tank. So we're really looking for that to be at about the halfway mark or so. That's always a good place to be. And this is how you check your oil. You can check it with the dipstick in the back. It's the most reliable way. But if you can get a little bit of needle movement and you know that the needle does what it does and you know the level when it does what it does, then it's a great visual check. But you have to remember, your engine has to be hot and you have to have the engine idling for a little bit as well. So that looks great to me, actually. That's exactly where I'd like to see it. So the final thing we want to do is we just want to take a look in here and just make sure we haven't left anything out or forgotten about anything. We have our oil cap back on. We're looking for drips under here, under the oil filter. You can see under there, yep, looks all good. Everything looks great. Our next step is to just check under the car and make sure there are no leaks there. This is our drain plug again. That should be nice and dry. And then over here is the drain for the tank. We want to make sure that's also nice and dry. A couple of other things to check is this return line. We want to make sure it's not leaking anywhere. That's the end that goes back into the car. So you want to make sure everything's dry there as well. So some parting thoughts on the oil change. After you get done with it, you still have all that oil you have to take care of. So I keep old oil containers and I go ahead and put it in that. Makes it super easy and clean to transfer it to the hazmat area. In our area, one of the best places to drop off oil are the auto parts stores. A lot of them have big grease traps and you can just go down with your containers and dump your oil in. So it works out really well. Well, I hope you enjoyed the oil change in our 3.2 Carrera. It's a pretty easy process and a great way to get to know your car. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below and we'll go ahead and get back to you. Hit the little bell next to the subscribe button if you want to be notified next time we post a video. So thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And until next time, safe travels. Bye.